media briefing here today, and we thank everyone for making the time. Minister, I'm not going to waste any time, but to invite you to please come through. Colleagues, the Deputy Minister is here and the DG is here, and they will also be supporting the Minister. The Minister, over to you.
Thank you very much, Elijah. Let me acknowledge my colleague, the Deputy Minister, DG, officials from the department, and most important, the journalists that have attended and those that have linked with us. I think, as you may recall, that on the 31st of January this year, Cabinet did decide to make changes to the adjusted alert level 1 with immediate effect. So in terms of that decision, secondary, primary, and special schools were now allowed to return to full daily attendance, and the regulatory provision for social distancing of 1 meter for learners in schools was removed. So since the decision was taken, as a sector, we have engaged in a series of meetings, starting with the Council of Education Minister, CEM, followed by consultations with the heads of education departments. So the CEM followed the meeting by heads of department. We met with school governing bodies, we met with teacher unions, we met with associations that work with special schools, but also the principals associations, and through the NECT also had meetings with civil society to really engage around the return of school. And I must say from the onset that during our engagements with all the stakeholders, a number of concerns were raised. In particular, from all the meetings, the state of school infrastructure and the feasibility of accommodating all these learners under the current circumstances were raised. And amongst others, there is a question of the delivery of stationery and textbooks, especially in the Eastern Cape. But they also raised the question of overcrowding, which was a problem that we went to the COVID-19 with. And it was identified as an area that needs urgent and special attention. So we did assure our social partners that were presently in talks with the National Treasury to resolve these matters, take into consideration that these changes or these challenges, they came before COVID-19. So at the right time, we will provide feedback on the progress and the discussions that we are involved with the Minister of Finance and Cabinet on prioritizing this area of infrastructure and see if we can resolve this area and give it the necessary priority attention. The other matters that were raised also in these meetings included the question about teacher supply, replacing teachers that we had lost during COVID-19. So a number of issues were raised by the stakeholders that we engaged with. But in all the engagements, however, there was an overwhelming support for the full return of learners to daily attendance. And this means that the rotational timetabling that we have been applying since 2020 does come to an end. So we have today, which is Sunday, published a gazette which officially ushers in the new environment as per the Cabinet decision. CEM, which means a meeting with MECs, met twice this week, and we have agreed that full-time attendance starts tomorrow, Monday, the 7th of February, 2022. As a sector, we remain mindful of the fact that COVID-19 is still with us. All of us have direct responsibility to ensure that we prevent the spread of this virus and its variants. Medical science has informed the decision that had been taken in the past, and as a sector, we continue to follow advice and guidance from public health experts. On Friday, the 4th of February, 2022, the Council of Education Ministers convened to consider the state of readiness for the full return of learners, and we are confident that schools are ready for the new norm. Even yesterday, on Saturday, we did meet with teacher unions again to assess the state of readiness and report to them on the matters that they had raised with us during the course of the week. So in preparation for the return of all schools to daily attendance, provinces have made preparations around the following important areas. First, we had to communicate with parents to ensure and make sure that they understand or they really get ready for the fact that full schooling is resuming. We have adjusted the school timetable. We have adjusted our school assessment programs. All matters relating to assessments and curriculum have been attended to. We have looked at how we really are managing the environment now with the new norm, strengthening our non-pharmaceutical preventions, accelerating and working on infrastructure, as I've reported earlier, continue with the provision of transport because now all learners are coming back on a daily basis, the continued provision of school nutrition, intensified monitoring and oversight, and also looking at the curriculum recovery plans, because as you may appreciate that almost from more than 2 years, we just never had normal schooling. So the return to normal timetabling will assist the sector to intensify its implementation of the recovery plan. The learning losses incurred in the past 2 years are indisputably devastating. At the basic education level, last week, we resolved that the sector will need to be rebooted, recalibrated, and repositioned to withstand the debilitating impact of COVID-19 and any other pandemic or life-threatening challenge that we may face. In the first step towards addressing the crisis of learning losses is to prevent further disruptions in schools and prevent other learning losses when ensuing the health and safety in our schools. The second step will be to introduce measures to catch up on the time lost as well as the teaching time lost. We urge parents and all our stakeholders in the sector to support efforts to ensure that education continues without any further delay. So last week, we did convene our 7th Basic Education Lekgotla, and our theme was equipping learners with knowledge and skills for a changing world in the context of COVID-19. And this Lekgotla anchored its presentations, deliberations, and debates on a number of items, but particularly also in this Lekgotla, we were inspired by national and international experience and innovative practices that were shared by many speakers on highlighting the importance of the Lekgotla theme and the different objectives that we had. Amongst others, we did discuss at length the impact of COVID-19 in education and health, monitoring learning and COVID-19 context, perspectives of learning recovery in the African context, and learner assessment under COVID-19 context. We also took a look around teachers as leading change agents in building a resilient education system, and also shared perspectives and views and the importance of ECD for future learning outcomes. So I don't want to go into all what the Commission said. They'll be in the main speech, so I don't want to take too long. But I can say that in that Lekgotla, we came out very energized to ensure recommendations of that Lekgotla and the implementation and the recovery plans. What we also want to highlight at this meeting is the importance of making sure, and that's what we're going to be working on with teacher unions, we've agreed with parents' bodies, that we have to ensure that everybody, we had a very successful campaign, but we want everybody in the system to vaccinate. The sector, the discussions reflected on what we said is the mandate, not mandatory vaccination. There was a new concept of the mandate to vaccinate. So we do want everybody in the sector to vaccinate. We're encouraging our teachers to go for a booster, which is available in different health sites. We also discussed about the need to make sure that we encourage our young people to vaccinate, because we are told that of the 7.7 million qualifying learners, 1.2 has vaccinated. In the past 24 hours, 15,000 young people have vaccinated, but we call on parents and caregivers to encourage young people who qualify to go for vaccinations. On school nutrition, again, what we are very happy about with the return, that now we'll be able to do all our social programs, your school nutrition programs, your vaccination programs for cervical cancer, which we're running, but also your deworming programs are going to come back on board. And that's what is also exciting us about the full return, that all the services that we're providing in schools will be returned. We also focus on the implementation of our sports and enrichment programs. The department, after consultation with different stakeholders, we did publish directions in October and this year also. But we want to encourage all schools to resume with their sports and extracurricular programs, but still comply with hygiene and safety measures. Choir rehearsals, for instance, and other indoor activities must happen in well-ventilated spaces. The department has placed sports and enrichment assistance in schools to reboot the support and the resumption of sports. We will be using, in particular, the Presidential Youth Employment Initiatives, the young people that we have put in school, to assist in these initiatives. But we also continue to encourage young people who have not succeeded in their matric, as I did when I was announcing results, to please register for the second chance. And the registration is closing now on the 15th of February. They may be able to rewrite in May and June, but they can also rewrite at the end of the year. We also are excited that with the return to schools, we will also be able to facilitate our work around the ECD function shift. And so the migration gives us as a sector an opportunity to craft and implement innovative strategies to strengthen the foundation learning, looking at the continuum of birth to early grades. For this reason, one of the key priorities that we have is also to focus on this ECD shift, which is going to begin from the 1st of April this year. I want to say in conclusion, I really want to take this opportunity to thank MEC for all the advice and the guidance that they've been giving us. Thank Cabinet also for heeding to our request to have all schools open and sent back in full numbers. To also thank the MECs from the different provinces for working hard to make sure that indeed, when the announcement came, they all reported, this is Friday, that they will be ready to receive all learners tomorrow. So I'm very grateful for that. But I also want to appreciate the support that we've been receiving around this program, even before during COVID period, and even now, the work that we've been receiving from the NECT, from UNICEF, and other bodies, which have really been helping us in terms of interacting with communities and making sure that we work together. At this point, I really want to express my sincere condolences again to the family of the deputy principal who was shot outside our school in Pumulo, whose funeral was last week, but also express our sincere condolences to the learners in KwaZulu-Natal who were traveling from school, who got involved in a crash in which 2 learners lost their lives and 6 others were injured. We do hope that police will get to the bottom of the matter. It is alleged that alcohol played a role in this incident, but we leave it out to police. And once again, to thank the community for having helped us during the month of January with constant visits, constant gifts to the sector. So we enjoyed lots of attention, but also lots of support from communities. Now, as we want to move towards stability, with respect and humility, is to request that we don't receive more visits. I'm saying, with all respect, that the Education Month has come to an end. February, we need stability. We would not want to have people now to come and visit us and see how we're doing with the return of all learners. Because the school visits are very welcome, but they also pose serious risk to the sector. And teacher unions raised that with me, that principals get intimidated, but it also opened us to a number of criminal activities, people who come as though they are coming to really support us on the return to school. And then criminals came into some schools, robbed teachers. So we're saying, as we reopen, we are humbly asking the public that we will be fine. We appreciated the visits in January, but from February until next January, we don't want school visits. People can only come to schools with the permission of the principal and also after consulting the SGP, but no one should turn up at our gate from tomorrow to say they're visiting us to check if we are fully ready. Only myself, MECs, SGBs, and school governing bodies can give permission for people to visit, because it does indeed open us to all sorts of difficulties. We've also witnessed undesirable guests in our schools doing all sorts of things that I see on social media. Again, we're requesting people not to come to schools. These children have got parents, they are teachers, they are school governing bodies, and if they want to provide support, let them do it through the school governing body and principals, and not just pitch up at the school and then take over. And I think we really want to say it with all respect and humility that from tomorrow onwards, we don't wish to have visitors. We will possibly welcome visitors again next January during the Education Month, but for now we are fine. Thank you very much.
We are fine. Don't call us, we'll call you. Thank you so much, Minister, for the statement. I'm not sure if DM has anything to add. If the DG, maybe DG on that issue of the teachers that have not vaccinated. Okay. All right, that's fine. So, can we take questions? Carla, do you have any questions on Teams? We have some of our media colleagues joining us on Teams. If there's anyone there with a question, Carla, let's go for it.
Nothing on the thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And back to the room. Any questions? All right, I'm seeing one hand. Okay, two. All right, let me start at the back. Govin, please introduce yourself properly.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's Govin Riddles from ENTA. Minister, you had mentioned issues which have been raised around infrastructure, delivery of stationery and textbooks, and overcrowding. If you could just explain, when the kids go back tomorrow, full classes, how severe are these concerns? Are they going to impact on learning going ahead, or do you believe you can start with learning and then top those up? You said you were engaging with the Treasury to meet the needs of what's required to return to school. Have you got a requested amount that you need from the Treasury, or are you still trying to see how much you will need? Thank you.
All right, thanks for the question.
Morning, Minister. So, Hope from News from Africa. I just want to ask the issue of teachers. You mentioned that there are plans to replace the teachers that you lost due to the virus. And with all learners going back, that could be a problem, because we've heard how often some teachers are dealing with a lot of children in one class. By when do you think you would have replaced most of the teachers that you would have lost to the virus, just to make things seamless for learning and teaching? Thank you.
All right, those are the questions, Minister. Going to ask you to, yeah, please come through.
Yeah, the question of infrastructure came from all the meetings, with civil society, all meetings, teacher unions, parents, even provinces themselves. When we said we want children back to class, the first thing they asked to say, how do we do it with the infrastructure challenges we had? And I said to them, we had them before COVID. So we can't link the return to classes to our pre-COVID problems. Yes, indeed, we're coming back full, carrying the burden of disease, but we have to strengthen the non-pharmaceuticals and make a plan. If it means we use your specialist rooms, even if it means we take some classes platooning, where you can platoon, but the fact of the matter is, let's agree that all learners are coming back, and school by school should work on the matter, because it's not too many schools, especially in primary schools. Only 20% of primary schools had not returned fully. The majority of primary schools had returned fully. It's in high schools where the majority of high schools had not returned. So what we agreed is to say, yes, we are aware that we have a problem. It's a pre-COVID problem. Let's fast track how we deal with it. In the meantime, in any case, provinces have been dealing with them. I know, for instance, in Gauteng, they've been having a big program on the running of your self-built schools, where committees were given money to build blocks of classrooms in schools. Some provinces indicated to me that they have already ordered the mobiles, but we said, whilst we're waiting for mobiles, we're going to do whatever it takes to do things. About the monies, yes, they have costed, and I can't definitely say the Minister of Finance said, yes, I'll have that money. We have to prioritize and say, where do we start? We're going to start with the existing infrastructure which has been destroyed, storm-damaged schools, and Treasury is working with Public Works and other agencies in government to make sure that there can be just a boom support to us, because as a sector, we just really will not cope with all the challenges facing us. So there is a commitment from the Minister of Finance to assist us, both financially, but even in terms of capacity. Because the other problem with DBE or education is the capacity to focus on learning and teaching, school feeding, safety, and then school infrastructure. So there is commitment to help us with the school infrastructure. We're meeting also with, even Tuesday, DG and team, with some teams that Treasury is putting in place to assist us. So we should be, by the time he goes to his budget, we should be able to get a full sense of how much the assistance is going to be. But part of the solutions which I've been discussing with him is to ring fence the very money that we have. Because in some instances, not the money which is a problem, it's the capacity of the sector to help itself. So with outside help, I think it will help us a lot. In terms of teacher replacements, and what I think, DG, it will be fine, because we have stacks and stacks of reports that came from provinces, where province by province gave us a breakdown to say where are the gaps. So it's not all provinces that have not been able to replace their teachers. It should be, I mean, the biggest challenge was in KZN. And even in KZN, the problem of replacing teachers, it's a pre-COVID problem. So we're working with them to help them to stabilize the teacher sections. In the meantime, we will be working with using our teacher assistants to support schools. But some of these assistants are young, unemployed teacher graduates that have not been formally employed. So we'll be using them whilst we process properly their employment in schools. So we have the PYEs until end of March. Is that not so? Until end of March. And in the meantime, we'll be working with them just to keep the system going and the fort going. But the commitment is to fill all vacant posts, even promotional posts, to create a form of stability, because we really need stability if we have to reboot the system. So those were the two questions. Or Kwendishil. DG. Did I leave something? Or Robert, what's up with the Eastern Cape one?
Yeah.
Because we've been dealing with it, if you don't mind, DG. Now, DG's been dealing with the matter for some time now. Thanks, DG.
This is my future occupation of sanitizing facilities when I retire. Okay, thank you, Minister, Deputy Minister, and colleagues. Just to add on the issue of replacing educators who tragically demised during COVID, it's a normal process when natural attrition happens, then provinces start with their recruitment, and this happened immediately after some of these incidents happened. And therefore, when schools reopened, Minister, those who tragically succumbed to COVID-19, provinces looked for teachers to replace them. Now, when it comes to what has been occasioned by the need to deal with overcrowding, we also signaled this to provinces as early as 2020, that even though the rotational system was going to happen, it wasn't going to necessarily take away challenges around overcrowding. And that's why, at least where I have been, and I've been to many areas in 3 provinces at least, KZN, Eastern Cape, and Limpopo. I can actually claim that I've traversed every area in those 3 provinces, and those are the most problematic, the biggest and the most rural. The landscape of KZN, you go anywhere in that province, you'll see mobile classrooms all over. And they've supplemented that by also employing additional teachers to be able to deal with additional learning spaces. So that happened as early as 2020. Last year, we've seen that as we are moving around, up to even this week, this past week. So with the return of all learners, the replacement of educators would have been dealt with. Now, stationery and textbooks, Minister, it's a concern of only one province, which is Eastern Cape, and this is how we are told it happened. The HOD in the Eastern Cape, Dr. Mbude, and we've been dealing with this as part of our preparation for 2022. We've got what we call a sector plan to deliver on stationery and textbooks, sector plan, which is developed at DBE, monitored throughout to ensure that all provinces are ready by October of the outgoing academic year in preparation for January the subsequent year. October of the outgoing academic year, we determine the state of readiness for the delivery of stationery and textbooks. From that time, we experienced problems with the Eastern Cape because they have not procured from October 2021. And when we inquired, the problem was that they were still waiting for money from provincial treasury. They had not received money. And they only received money in December when everybody had closed according to the HOD. And that's why we are sitting with this problem in the Eastern Cape. Fortunately, their textbook recovery and retention rate is one of the highest. It's over 90%. I'm talking about textbooks. Now with stationery, unfortunately, you've got to replace every year. And that's why we've had these problems beginning of the year. And by the end of the past week, the HOD had indicated that they were at 90% of the delivery of stationery. So that's about stationery and textbooks, Minister. We are dealing with it up to last night, and yesterday when we finished the meeting with teacher unions, we had a meeting with the Eastern Cape. The HOD is giving us an update virtually every day. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you so much, Minister. Thank you, DJ. Do we have other questions, colleagues? Terence, Carla, Hope? Okay, I see the 3 hands in the room. Let's start on our WhatsApp line.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mhlanga. We have received one question relating to can learner operators come and pick up learners inside school property or on a school field? Thank you.
All right, that's one. Okay, let's come back to the room. Let's start with you, Shuma.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Shuma from SABC Radio News. I've got two questions. Although maybe the minister might say these are administrative issues between the learners and the parents, but these are issues that are appearing each time, this time of the year, where you find that some schools by February, they still withholding learners' school results for the past year. There's a school in Joburg, Sundown Combined School or something. Parents are still having dispute with the results of their kids because they feel either they've been cooked or the child has failed for some reason, saying the child was absent from school. But when they check the child's classworks, on the days where they say the child was not coming to school, there's a classwork that was marked by the teacher. Those kids are sitting at home since January. Even last week they were still at home. We've got a situation in Northwest where some matriculants haven't received their results because some of them, they didn't return the tablets that were given to them by the department. Either they lost them or it has a crack and they say, go and repair it. And me and you, we know that if my gadget is broken, it's not easy to repair it. So what about a parent who's not working and you tell that child, you won't get your results, you won't even register for, you won't even apply for NSFAS funding because your results are still with us. Those kids have lost the whole year of tertiary now as we speak. Those who have failed, they can't even register for the second chance because they've lost a gadget that cost 4,000 and the parent doesn't work. So these, of course, are administrative issues between the school learners and the parents. But if the school insists, they believe that the minister or the department at national level should intervene because you cannot oppress a parent who's not employed to replace a gadget that she can't even use. I don't know even how they work, but they have to replace them. They can't even afford an insurance for that.
All right, thank you. Thank you for those two issues. Govind, let's go back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the opportunity. Minister, the social distancing has now been removed. In schools, we presume learners still have to keep their masks on. Now that you have a full class, how are teachers going to teach full classes with no social distancing? Are you concerned that there is a possibility for infections here? Or what does the information say, or what does the study say about the likelihood of the learners infecting each other? Of course, understanding that it was a cabinet decision to remove those restrictions and go back to school. I just want to hear from the department. And then you're encouraging learners who are eligible to vaccinate, as well as teachers, but we know not all teachers are vaccinated, unless I'm incorrect. Will there be any restrictions placed on teachers who are not vaccinated? And then finally, is there a different procedure for teachers who are now teaching a class full of children during COVID? Are they going to teach them like they used to teach them before COVID? Or now that the class is full, is there a specific procedure they'll have to follow in teaching? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. Please do that.
So again from the Newsroom Africa. I've got a few questions. Just the first one, Govind has touched on around the issue of vaccinations. What's going to happen with those teachers that have not vaccinated at this stage? And then the DG, or you, the Minister, said the issue around completing or eradicating pit latrines, if I'm not mistaken, you said by this upcoming financial year. I'd just like to know the progress on the eradication of these pit latrines, especially now that all learners will be going back to class, the bigger need now. And then are we still going to be continuing with the trimmed curriculum, or are we going back to the previous way before COVID? And last year, schools had administered controlled tests. Are you still going to continue with this, or are you returning to normal examinations? yeah, that's it from my side. Thank you.
I just have some clarity around my question that I asked to be more specific, if I can. Like,
just press that thing there for better audio.
Just to further clarify what I was asking in terms of a different procedure now that all the kids are back at school. I was referring specifically to how the kids were managed in class and during break, how the break times were managed, what the process was when a kid would get sick at school. There was also a specific procedure. So are we still on that, or we moved? Thank you.
All right, that makes sense. Thank you. All right, that's fine. No additional questions from you, colleagues? Nothing. All right, thank you. Minister, over to you.
No, thanks, Carl. On school operators, when we made the announcement, we did, and that's why we had asked for 3 days from Cabinet. The decision was made on Monday, and I did request Cabinet to allow me full 3 days so to communicate with our food suppliers to say they have to deliver all the food by Friday. The furniture, we had put it in some warehouses, it had to be returned. Scholar transport operators, again, different schools, depending on how they were working with them, would have informed them on the old system. So there won't be anything new which did not happen before COVID-19. So if they were dropping learners in schools, inside the gate, it will continue like that. So schools were given 3 days to work on the return in a way that suits them. So in some areas, they have spots where they drop learners. I saw that in some areas, buses are allowed in. There's a parking place. So I won't be able to know whether they can drop them in school or not. It depends on what is the communication between the school and the operators. But the 3 days was to enable schools and provinces to inform their service providers that we have to rework the system back. So buses will now pick up all learners, whereas it was picking up half of them, and all sorts of things. In the past, where they platoon, they will pick them twice. So they had to do all the rearrangement to suit the new situation. On learner results, it will require us to get the details of, because I'm not able to say yes, they're right or wrong, whether children attended or not. So I'll ask Ukada and Elijah to take the details. Immediately tomorrow, we will work on the information that comes from there, because it will be strange that children are failed willy-nilly. It doesn't happen. There's nothing to gain by failing children if there's no reason to fail them. But I'm not saying they have failed. Parents always and children always have reasons why they fail, and when they pass, they never give reasons why they pass. So there's obviously something that needs to be investigated and understood before we can issue a judgment. But I can say from my experience, it just doesn't happen easy that you just decide we don't like this child and they're going to repeat the class. There must be something that needs investigations, and we'll attend to it with the province. Also on the return of tablets, again, I will want to get the real name of the school and understand the circumstances. Why were the tablets not returned? Because bottom line is, as you say, it's 4,000 rands. It's a resource we want the next child to enjoy. But if this cohort, when it leaves with the resources, it's to rob the other generation that comes. And that's why we take it serious, the question of returning resources back to schools. It's not to punish or to be insensitive. It's because even those that come to you have a right to benefit from that resource. So again, I'm not able to judge, to say, yes, the schools were unfair, they are insensitive to poor people, and sometimes I feel very uncomfortable when we use poverty not to do things right. You have been lent a gadget, return it. It's cracked, bring it. Let's see if it's cracked and see what we do with it. But you can't stay with a gadget and say you want your results. You're not giving us what is rightfully not belonging to you. So again, I think we work very well with our provinces. We can investigate what is happening in the schools and assist as far as we can. But in the meantime, I will appeal to those parents to say, bring the gadget. Let's talk with the gazetteer, cracked or not cracked. Let's talk with the gazetteer. It's not correct to withhold children's results as they're not able to now to apply to go to second chance. Second chance you apply without results. So again, let's get what the real factors are. I'll ask DG because we have issued this morning new regulations around how schools are supposed to be managed, from sports to class to pedagogy. So I've just signed them out today. So I don't see other officials who are responsible for the regulations, but they've just been published today. Maybe that's why people are not aware about them, around making sure that there's full ventilation in classrooms, making sure that even if there's a certain number of learners have to be broken, that's why we're even talking about platooning. But what we agreed with the provinces, they have to do whatever it takes to have the environment safe, work out that there are no infections, there's no crowding of children. Other measures, for instance, there are different access gates. Normally we open one gate, we're saying open more than one gate so that there's no crowding. So those are some of the measures we've put in place to say there must be more access gates, more entry areas so that they don't go through one channel, then they use all entry systems. So schools were supposed to rework and redemarcate that. And whilst not creating that 1 meter space, but avoid crowding. And that's why I mentioned that we'll be using the Presidential Youth Initiative deploys those education areas to help us also manage more what should happen. So we've issued the Gazette. I'll ask DG just to speak to the elements about the Gazette. We've agreed also with MECs and teachers that even pedagogy in classes has to change. There must be break masks so that kids, whilst they sit next to each other, they must not remove masks. There must still be washing of hands. There must be regular sanitation. So all those things we've put in place to say, now that we have removed the social distancing, what do we have in place and how do we manage that? And that we have worked out through the guidance and support of teachers, and we've issued the Gazette today of what schools should do. But in the meantime, some of the matters in the Gazette would have been regulated. About vaccinations, yes, indeed, the last count I had was about that we had almost more than 80% vaccination levels in our schools. So we still have that 20% that are still around religion and health. And what we said to the very people that would not vaccinate is that no one, if they have comorbidities, they will not be allowed to stay home. So we've removed this question of really giving people permission to stay home if they have comorbidities, which has helped to get us as many people as possible to vaccinate. In our discussions with teacher unions, they did say they don't support mandatory vaccination, but they support what they call vaccine mandates. That there will be a mandate in a system to say you cannot enter this building if you're not vaccinated for the safety of other people. It's your choice. So the responsibility is left to the individual. And we'll be working through and see how it pans out in the context of the presidential team on vaccine mandates. We thought as a sector we should work on the vaccine mandates for the sector, but it still has to be approved and worked through. But we also felt, because that schools, where possible, should work with the Department of Health, that we continue to have schools as sites for vaccination. Because some of the people who didn't vaccinate are people who were infected by the time we were running the campaign. It's people who were hesitant. They wanted to see if indeed people were not going to die within a year. So they can see that we've not died almost within a year. They also wanted, so you had people who really were not very sure about the efficacy, who now indicate that they want to vaccinate. So we will be working with health to make sure that certain schools are designated as vaccination sites, not only for the education community, but also for the community in those areas to really help boost up the vaccination levels, because it's a concern to us, because these kids come from communities. If they're not vaccinated, they might bring the problems to us at school. So it's very important for us also to make sure that vaccination levels in communities are stepped up for our own protection also as a sector. So that's why we took that position. I'm going to ask DM to speak about the infrastructure as a person responsible for infrastructure. And DG, if I've left something, because I wrote something, management in schools, then I wrote PYA. I'm sure it was the curriculum and the sports management that we will be relying on, because it's quite a big number of young people. There are about 290,000 young people who are in our schools who should be able to help us with the management of the environment in the context of the return to schools. For instance, they won't be doing screening anymore because that also creates congestions at the gate. So we're removing some measures. We're not removing screening. It's not yet. So it's multi-entrances that we really make sure that there's no crowding, there are no delays now that they are coming big numbers, because in the past it was much more easier, only half came on a day, but now they're going to come all in one day. So we have to really spread out and manage the system differently that kids don't overcrowd. And we're going to rely on these presidential youth deployees in our schools to help us to manage the environment. So maybe DG, as I say, the Gazette only came out today. Maybe if you will recall what is inside and quickly say what are the changes. We pay the Gazette. There's infrastructure, then you do the Gazette. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. What I can say on infrastructure, because the question was saying how much have we requested. We cannot speak how much for now because we're still assessing. Remember, when we speak about storm damage, the storm damage is not only the one that happened during December and January, during these heavy rains, but there were some storm damaged schools which were not fixed. So when we go to Treasury, we are going back and also to look at the unsafe structures that we say to Treasury, this is our plight and it will cost so much. We are still going to have a meeting of infrastructure with all infrastructure provinces, including the unions. We agreed with them even yesterday that we must continue because they are on the ground. They know exactly what is happening. We can maybe get a report that say, no, we don't have a challenge on infrastructure, but the unions, because their members are teachers in a school, they know, including pit latrines as to how are we going to eradicate. We are busy with the process of eradicating pit latrines. It's a process that we said will conclude by 2023. Yes, we are not saying that learners should not stay without sanitation facilities. Where there's an urgent need, we come into that space, but where we can maybe try to manage those pit latrines, we are in a position to do that. Minister, on the management of learners, because now they are coming back in numbers, Minister indicated that there are learners, there are schools which, since Minister announced last year, especially primary schools, that learners must come all. There are schools, only 20% of those schools whose learners have not come. So there are lessons learned from those schools, including screening and this, and we still have the EAs in place to help teachers. So we are going to use all that and the lessons learned from other schools. And we encourage, just like everything that we do, we give time for the sanitizing of the facilities and this and this. The time is no longer utilized like we used to in the past. Now, whatever we do, we give space for a screening and sanitizing of the facilities. So even learners, they are going to be encouraged with their parents also. That's the appeal that we are making to parents, let them come early to school to avoid the congestion at the gates. If they come early, but since schools have opened, Minister, the schools that we visited, learners are coming early, and we've never seen any congestion at the gate due to the screening and sanitizing and all these things. As we come, learners are already inside. They start coming very early, and that's what we encourage, that let them come early to school so that they allow that space for sanitation. Over to you, DG.
Thank you, Minister, Deputy Minister, and colleagues. Maybe let me start with the trimmed curriculum and control tests. The speech that the Minister delivered indicated that the circular issued on control tests would be withdrawn to ensure that your usual normal tests and exams resume. If all learners are coming, the emphasis in the speech is to recover learning losses, and that includes even the administration of normal assessment. We're trying to normalize teaching and learning to maximize gains of learning and teaching so that we improve even learning outcomes. So the curriculum team will be meeting to look at the issue of the trimmed curriculum now that we will have almost the requisite time required to teach. The logic of the trimmed curriculum was that time was not enough to cover everything. So you reduce the curriculum to fundamentals that are required for scaffolding for the subsequent grades and for learners to be able to be fully prepared for exams. So that's that about the trimmed curriculum and control tests. So there will be a circular going out to withdraw the circular that talked about the control tests. Infrastructure. I think we need the whole day's workshop on infrastructure. The Minister requested me to also share with you what the Minister directed that we prepared because it was required by the President and National Treasurer. Let me just try and add to what the Deputy Minister has eloquently covered. Update in terms of pit latrines. But let me also try and explain, because in future people might say we have misled the nation. The pit latrines are replaced with safe, more appropriate, internationally accepted and approved dry solutions. Because we don't want people to go out to where we've built safe, appropriate, and more acceptable and approved structures and say, no, there's no waterborne. You will not find it. You'll find a dry solution, but which is safe, appropriate, internationally acceptable. I've used them. I spend most of the time there. So if they are properly maintained, in fact, I've been amazed, Minister, with the, for lack of a better word, the acumen that has developed in many of our schools, particularly school management teams, for hygiene purposes, with which they are able to maintain these facilities. The key points and cardinal words are appropriate, safe, acceptable, and approved sanitation structures. So just quickly, some statistics, but I'm sure Mr. Motshekga one day will organize a workshop. We now remain from the 300 plus sanitation structures we had, those that are allocated to implementing agents. Implementing agents are DBSA, KUHA, IDT, Public Works, Mvola Trust, and now the NECT, it's our another implementing agent. I've got all of them here, DBSA, NECT, TMT, which is Mvola Trust, CDC, which is Kucha. We also have donors. Koreans have donated also. The minister will be handing over, together with the embassy, 5 sanitation facilities that are built through donation. We've got many embassies that are also helping in that regard. And we've got ASUPOL. ASUPOL has been helping us in that as well. So those that are allocated to implementing agents, Minister, is 2,816. Of these, 1,553 have reached what we call practical completion, which means they've been handed over to schools for use. Let me repeat, 2,816 that were allocated. Of these, 1,553 have been handed over for use to schools. Now, the remaining 253 are on design and planning stage. Those that are at the tender stage are 259. And then you also have those that are at 25% construction, 321. And then you've got those between 25 and 50, 167. 59 and 75 construction stage, 142. And then the last category of 76 to 99% completion, 121. We are chasing them. We want more and more of this to reach practical completion by the end of the financial year. We are going to remain with very few, Minister, for 2022-2023 financial year, which is the last lot, we hope, for sanitation, where they did not have sanitation at all. Going forward, we'll be dealing with inadequate sanitation. But the sanitation, they need more going forward. The minister also requested me to share with you what she's shared with the Minister of Finance and the President. We have a number of schools affected by storm damage. We have 1,095 of these schools. In fact, I also said that I believe that there are more, Minister. The difficulty is that there are storm damages every year, as we all know, especially around November, December, January. So the estimated value to fix this is 1 billion rands. Yeah, so that's that. And then the other one, Minister, was
The circular on teaching.
okay, yeah. Let's go to Gavin's point. Gavin wanted to know about what the practice is going to be. The directions, as the minister correctly pointed out, has now given effect to all the changes that Cabinet announced Tuesday morning after the meeting, in fact, the evening of the 31st of January, which was Monday evening. We waited for the COCTA regulations to capture that, and the COCTA regulations were released on Tuesday. Now that has found expression in our directions. And the directions have also included, as the minister correctly indicated, extracurricular activities and programs. But what would be much more comprehensive to give direction in schools is circular number S1 of 2022. Circular number S1 of 2022, entitled Measures for the Resumption of Full-Time Daily School Attendance. That's the title of that circular. This circular was approved and issued on the 4th of February, which is Friday, after the Council of Education Ministers, and was then sent to heads of provincial education departments, district directors, circuit managers, school principals, school governing bodies, teacher unions, and school governing body associations. We'll also be forwarding them to other stakeholders. Let me just isolate. It covers 5 cardinal points, 5 points, Minister. The first one is COVID-19 interventions. And I'll just isolate a few points there. It says, taking into account the resumption of full-time schooling, the regulatory provision for 1 meter social distancing in schools has been removed with immediate effect, which is an issue that Gavin raised. The following non-pharmaceutical measures should be maintained and adhered to by schools and education officers. It covers the issue of the wearing of non-surgical face masks by all learners, teachers, non-teaching staff, and visitors. It goes on to say face mask breaks for learners should be 5 to 15 minutes for every 2 hours during the school day, where they can safely remove their mask in an outdoor area. And it gives a number of cardinal points there under that heading of COVID-19 interventions. A number of things. We'll share it with you in the interest of time. Then cardinal point number 2 is isolation for COVID-19 positive cases. And in there also, Minister, we enumerate what needs to happen to give very clear guidance. And then number 4, let me check whether my numbering is right. Sorry. Number 2 was just the introduction. Number 1 was the introduction. Number 2 is COVID-19 interventions. And then number 3 is isolation for COVID-19 positive cases. And then number 4 is sports and extracurricular activities. We also guide there on what needs to happen, and we list a number of things that people should follow. And then the last one, Minister, is COVID-19 vaccination program. And that also, we talk about teachers who have not vaccinated to go for vaccination, to be encouraged to go for vaccination, the non-teaching staff, but we also encourage those who are vaccinated to go for booster jabs. So the issue of screening, it continues as part of this, because it's part of the COCTA regulations. It's also covered in our directions. It's also covered in our circular. So that will continue. I hope that provides the information that's required. Thank you, Minister.
All right, there you go. A briefing for about an hour or so. Important information. The big takeaway, though, folks, children are back in school from tomorrow, full time.
Yeah, I think the more things you say, the more questions you prompt. It is okay. It is okay. Carla, let me check with you first. Any questions? Hope, any questions? If we don't have, we'll go to the hands. Do you have?
Yeah, there was one, and I think DG has actually just answered it, because This is the information that should be contained in that gazette.
Okay.
So I will respond to the question.
Okay, it's fine. Yeah, we will share the gazette. And the circular, yeah. The circular, we've been circulating it from yesterday already. So the demand is for the gazette now. But we're going to share it. Let's agree that the 2 hands that we're taking now are the last round. Let's take in your hand. And please introduce yourself because you're speaking for the first time this morning.
From SABC Minister. On the mental state of both the learners and the teachers, are there any plans or strategies that are in place in terms of helping them cope with going back to classrooms, as you said that it's been 2 years of not normal schooling? Are they ready?
Okay, thank you for that question.
I just wanted to ask around the issue of exam irregularities. There have been media reports about this within specifically the Eastern Cape, where 800 learners and 50 teachers were implicated in exam irregularities from the class of 2021. And we are told that the results, of course, are withheld for the learners. What's the current status there? I mean, the learners are facing the brunt by not getting the results. But what is the possibility, what would happen in an instance like this to the teachers who might have assisted in the irregularities? Thank you.
All right, that's fine. Okay, no further questions. Okay, I think at the end of the responses to these questions, we won't be taking any more questions. Is someone talking to us via Teams there? Okay, there's no one. Okay. All right, great stuff. Minister, over to you. Carla, please clean up.
Yeah, the point on psychosocial services is also one of the areas we identified as part of preparations that have to be put in place for the full return to class. But the fact of the matter is that it's not that they were away for 2 years. They were coming either Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or weekly. So the school would, in a way, teachers know what is the state of their children because they've not been coming daily. But all the same, we felt that some of the learners had lost parents, have lost people close to them. Even the teachers themselves have lost colleagues. So there is a need to strengthen our psychosocial services, but it's not in the vacuum that they were not there. They were there. So schools would know where the children were orphaned. And even during that period, we had brought in lots of psychosocial services, especially for educators themselves, because they were losing colleagues, children were losing their teachers. So we had started working very close with social development because it was already a problem. And even the kids themselves not coming to school, it was really destabilizing them. They would have forgotten that, especially the younger ones. And some you could see teachers tell me, it was sometimes much more nicer to be at home because sometimes it's the friend who's not coming today. So it had just brought lots of instability to the sector. And we think the normal return to class will help stabilize them, even mentally, emotionally, and educationally. They will have a routine that is stable, that every week, Monday to Friday, they're at the school. They're not rotating, they're not platooning, they're there from 8. So it will really bring lots of stability. And in the last month, I've been visiting quite a number of schools. It was quite amazing how I will ask them in class to say, do you want to come back to class every day? They say, please, 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 we want to be here every day. The last school I went to in Springs, I'm sure these kids just saw the cars. Suddenly the township was clamoring around fences. Kids asked for boys, and really you could see that they were missing the daily coming to schools because there are sports fields in the schools, it's safer, they are with friends, more than even school. So children are quite ready. The request to Cabinet, it's not even Cabinet, we've been bugging Cabinet to say we want our children to be brought back. We had been given permission from last year, but Omicron came in. We just felt it was unsafe to bring them back at the height of Omicron. So even ourselves and the sector has been wanting this return back to class. Learners in particular, can see, okay, I just, so it's, yeah, on exam irregularities, actually, for some reason, I mean, the speech was long. There was a whole section on exam irregularities. So I was trying to get my notes. Did you know it off by heart? Because it's in my notes. Was I bent with? If I didn't want to, if I was not worried about boring you, I would have spoken about it, because it is a key issue. Even colleagues are phoning me from provinces, and the poverty story comes in. They say because they are poor, they are withholding their results. And I say, what is the pleasure of withholding results? I mean, why would you withhold results if there's no reason to withhold results? It's easier to release them. So it is a hot issue. Committees are very concerned. Even chiefs have been, there are chiefs in the Eastern Cape were saying, release our children, because don't take advantage of our poverty and our rural. Just say the poor and the rural stories coming in again. And why would you withhold results of people because they are poor? Yeah, so it's in, I think we'll circulate the full speech. The full explanation is in the full speech.
Thank you, Mr. Kala. I can see you want to take my future job. Thank you, Minister, Deputy Minister, and colleagues. Irregularities. You would recall that when Umalusi released and approved the results, they were very clear that the results that are withheld because investigations have to continue and conclude, and then make a determination on those results would be withheld. It is that is done in terms of law. The Janfekwa Act, which regulates the establishment of Umalusi. If there is anything irregular, the investigations have got to happen and the matter be concluded. Until then, they would be withheld. And what is going to happen in terms of the learners is that the affected learners are called in for interviews. And over the years, Minister, the difficulty that we have experienced, it's either learners or parents or communities not cooperating with departmental officials to get interviews happening and conclude matters as soon as possible. I mean, there were instances where venues where interviews were planned, officials got attacked, the police had to be called in to rescue them out of, some of the schools. So the appeal that we are making, it's for parents and learners to cooperate. In many instances, these learners are innocent. In the majority of instances, by the way, they are innocent, and would want these matters to be concluded as quickly as possible so that the results are released. We also know that as part of the act that regulates the establishment of Umalusi, if it's discovered that the results are released and that something irregular is picked up, Umalusi has got every right in terms of the law of parliament to withdraw those results. We don't want that to happen. Just imagine you are already in the field, having practiced as a medical doctor, and suddenly something comes up. Now we have to withdraw the results of grade 12, which nullifies the entire qualification of almost 7 years. You don't want that to happen. Minister, I hope that helps, and I think the details are in the speech. We'll try and move as speedily as possible to get these matters finalized. Minister, maybe the last point to make is that we are also going to monitor the return of learners. We'll be monitoring that on a weekly basis with provinces. We have about 14 to 16 indicators, which includes things such as psychosocial support, attendance of learners, attendance of educators, the state of the facilities, whether there's adherence and full adherence to COVID-19 protocols, school furniture. We look at a host of things. There are about 14 to 16 of them. We are going to do that monitoring as a sector together with provinces. The NECT, Minister, will also be providing external monitoring, which they provided before we even returned in 2020, June the 1st. Thank you very much, Minister.
That was contained from what? Just the copying part, I mean, from the notes that I received from the department was that there are 6 schools affected in the Eastern Cape, which involves 864 candidates. And it says the results of these candidates have been withheld following the discovery of cheating in the form of group copying. And 57 educators were implicated in the cheating. And the investigations revealed that learners were assisted, and reports indicate that some of the educators have already confessed to helping the learners during the exams. So those teachers have been referred to the labor relations process for disciplinary action, so it belongs elsewhere. But because I've been getting these queries from different people, it's like chiefs, communities, I mean, the Minister of Small Business, I thought I could even read, because it is, I think, a major concern that committees have on this matter. Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah, because, for instance, this came on Friday from the Minister of Small Businesses. Minister, I'm doing rounds in the roadshows in the Eastern Cape, and there's a serious matter affecting schools and learners not having access to university because of allegations of ukukopa, whilst there are no processes and evidence, so they wish you to fast track the investigations. Parents are already protesting, and that it's because they are poor and rural, and that government does not care about their children. And as I have been getting from all areas, and I think that's why the department had added to that. So in my response, I did say that as a sector, we will run a nationwide awareness to educate school committees about what has happened, the implications of cheating, but also because parents may not really know what is happening, they just know that children's results are withheld, there are allegations which they are not familiar. And this one came from the chief, the minister was with the chief, who was really angry that his subjects were being persecuted for nothing. So I think what we need to do is to go back, DG, again inform chiefs and parents about the process and why the results are withheld and what is going to be the process, because it does raise lots of anxiety, especially amongst the parents and committee leaders. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Minister. Thank you, DG. Thank you, DM. Thank you, colleagues. No, we're not taking questions. We're done. They are here. You will ask the questions outside this forum. Thank you so much. You've been here for an hour and a half. That should be enough. Thank you. We've come to the end of the briefing. But one-on-one interviews, if you want them, they will still happen. But let's close this one officially. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you. Sure. The Minister was saying something. The Minister, sorry to interrupt you.
On what should be in the vaccine mandate.
All right. It's nothing.
Because that's a discussion. There's nothing. Yeah, it's not a
For
discussion.
learners or for teachers.
Huh?
There's nothing for learners or for teachers in terms of what they have to do. The only thing is that you can't stay at home with common.
Yeah, you can.
All right. No, thank you so much.
Remember that the president said that he was going to appoint a task team to look at that. And until that, vaccine mandate, until that happens, as sectors we can't,